Okay, so here's a little look at a custom Fiori app. Like all Fiori apps, it's written with SAPUI5, the UI framework, and it's pretty standard looking for the moment. We can see that we've got a split app, which consists of a master view and a detail view. In the master view, of course, we've got the idea of our items here that we're going to select in a list. And then once we select an item in the list in the master view, the corresponding item information is shown, is slid into place in the detail view. All of the controls that we see, apart from one, which we'll come to shortly, are in the SAP.m library of the SAP UI5 framework, and all the Fiori apps are written with SAP.m controls, with, again, an exception that we'll come to. So we have familiar items like the search field, and we've got, of course, the standard list here that sits, of course, within a page. The page has got a footer, and this search field is in the subheader as well. The page has got a title. The list contains object list items, which are bound to the entries in the model. The object list item is a really nice way of showing information about a particular item. The object list item itself contains attributes and statuses with semantic colours, so you can see maybe green there for initial. And over here we've got in the detail view, which is also a page object, sap.m.page, we've got an object header which displays very nicely information about a particular object. And then within the middle section we've got an icon tab filter, which is within an icon tab bar, of course. We're using that to display the supplier address, and it's actually this address here, this address layout, that is using a control that's not in the SAP.m library. It's a control in the sap.ui.layout library, in fact SAP UI layout form, and it's a simple form, a way of laying out forms. Down here we've got a table, sap.m.table, which is sort of the brother of the sap.m.list. It has columns, and each of the columns can be described separately. The table itself, of course, has a number of items which are bound to another set of items in the model, and we've got a bit more navigation here to a further detail page. Over here, well, at the bottom here, we can see we've got bars in the footer of each of the pages. So there's a bar in the footer of the master page in the master view, and we've got a button there which brings up a view settings dialog. In the same way, when we click on this button here in the bar in the footer of this page, we bring up a message box, and then we get a bit of a message toast at the bottom to signify success. So all in all, pretty standard stuff, and the Fiori nature is pretty well represented here by the look and feel from the controls that we're using, plus the default theme, the default uncustomized theme, which is Blue Crystal, which is all this nice and blue and white stuff. I've got an example of this exact same app, but run in Chrome, where Chrome is simulating an iPhone, and it looks like this. So let's refresh it, as you can see, and there's an idea of write once, run on many devices. So you've got exactly the same app, it's the same URL, of course, and the responsive design nature of a lot of the SAP.m controls, including the split app, mean that it does the right thing according to the screen real estate. So we've got the same list here in the master view, but here, because we've got not much space, only the master view is displayed. And once we select an item, we've got transition to the detail, just like we had on the tablet or desktop size screen. But you can see that also the simple form has adjusted itself to fit in. So we've got the different components under each other, as we have in the items of the table. So the delivery date and quantity columns have been shoved to the left-hand side, shoved below, because of space. We've still got the navigation, we've still got all the proof functionality. One interesting thing is that the dialogues on a phone device will stretch to full screen, which is nice. Anyway, enough of that. Let's have a quick look at how this application looks under the hood. I've got my editor here, and of course, like many applications, we start with an index.html. Let me just close these up for a second. The index.html, like any web app, is where we load stuff initially. We have the bootstrap, the UI5 bootstrap, which loads the core framework, and we pass a number of parameters. We've got the blue crystal theme parameter here. We're using controls from the sap.m and sap.ui.layout libraries, so we're going to preload those libraries. The binding syntax complex allows us to do more interesting things when we're binding model properties with the corresponding properties within controls, for example. So you can concatenate stuff from two different properties in one control field if you want to, for example. This resource roots here is basically saying, well, anything that begins with SAP UI demo my Fiori, you're going to find in this current same directory, which is this stuff here. We want to keep the index.html as simple as possible and as small as possible, so that's why we have only 3 lines here in this script tag. We are using the component concept, which is a relatively new concept, introduced I think with 1.16. It's documented here in the SDK. You can have a look at it. It's got a simple component concept documentation, and then you can go to advanced components. The general idea is that a component is a reusable chunk of application. So the reusability means that one developer group can develop a component which can consist of views and controllers and utilities and models and so on, and then you can embed that component within another application in a completely different developer group, for example. You can split up the development like that. A component lives in a container, so that's what this container is here, and we're instantiating the component there. Automatically it will look for a component.js here, which is of course is here, which is here, component.js. The component container is placed in the body, and that's it as far as the index is concerned. Let's have a look at the component.js. If you've written JavaScript views before, you might be familiar with this function here, create content. We're inheriting from this UI component to create our own component. There's 2 types of components. There's a component with a visual aspect, as in you can see stuff, and there are also components that don't have a visual aspect if you're building sort of services in the background, for example. This, of course, is going to be visual, so we have a create content function to fill in code for. We're creating a view. We're giving it an ID of app, and it's SAP UI demo my Fiori view app, which of course is there, view app. It's a JavaScript view. We'll have a look at that in a minute. And what we're doing is the root view. It's the view from which everything else hangs. We're creating our models. So we've got a JSON model pointing to a bit of test data. We've got an internationalization model, which is pointing to our resource bundles for the texts for the application. So when you see, for example, sales orders or sales order, there was the text that we want to be able to translate into different languages and therefore hold in a resource model in a message bundle. And we have also quite an interesting JSON model holding device information, which we can use then logically in Boolean statements in our XML views to decide whether to show or not various controls or parts of controls. Once we've done that, we return the view and leave go, and the view is instantiated and rendered. The app view looks like this. There's a create content. We've got the split app, which we can see is the whole thing. There's the split app there, split there. And we have a master page, and we have an empty page, which is the empty page that you see when you first load the app. There. And we put that in a shell as well, which we can't see on this screen because the screen is too small. And from there it goes on. We've got the master view and its corresponding controller. By the way, the master view is in XML, like most of the other views. We've got a line item view, an empty view, which doesn't have a controller. You don't have to have a controller if you don't need one, and so on. You have a utils directory, or we have a utils directory with formatting functions, for example, grouping functions, so all the sort of custom stuff that you might want, you can stick in a util directory. The message bundle, which are these texts here, is in this internationalization directory, and of course we've got our mock model. So that's really what a non-trivial application might look like, written with the component concept within SAP UI5.